So one of the top questions I get from our clients is, Pete, how do I train my remote team member? So here's a few tips I'm going to give you on training remote team members. So tip number one is, believe it or not, you do not need a training manual prior to hiring a remote team member. Go ahead and you can hire the remote team member prior to having the training manual or the checklist. A lot of people, they wanted perfection, and then they never get around to hiring a remote team member, and they never get the help they need, all because they're waiting on documenting their process or creating a training manual. So, okay, I hire a remote team member. I don't have training manuals. So what's the best way to train the remote team member? Well, the best way to train a remote team member is you need to spend a lot of time with them up front. So for the first, 30 days, you want to spend, almost as many days as you can, hopefully 3, 4, 5 days a week, spending an hour to an hour and a half on a Zoom call that is recorded. So this is a mistake I made early on. I didn't record the Zoom call. Record the Zoom call and start the training. Their job is to re-watch the Zoom call, and then their job is, and here's the big tip here, they create the process manual, the training manual, the checklist manual. They start creating the manual based on your Zoom calls. Now, why is this important? Well, there have been studies out there that say someone has to hear something 7 times before they actually get it. So if I'm listening to you and you're training me, and then I watch the video and then I have to write it down, well, that's 3 times within the first day that I'm hearing something. And if they are writing the manual down, they have to pay attention. So it's not just that they're just not watching the video just to watch the video, they're taking notes on the video. The next tip is that, they build a manual, not you. So this is great for them to build a manual for them to learn. In his book, The 1 Minute Manager, Ken Blanchard talks a lot about spending a lot of time with your team up front, and then over time, because they know all the information and they know all the answers, they don't need to be micromanaged or managed. And so this gives you a lot of time and a lot of freedom to do the things that you need to do to grow your business. Okay. And so those are some really good tips that we did. We did not do the training, the video training, which I was upset about. My last tip is, when you are training somebody, I would train them on the full process. Even if they only have a piece of the process, you should train them on the full process, because they need to know that how their piece affects the process in totality, and other people that have tasks to do in that process. For example, if they're only doing one piece of the move-in process, you should train them from the very beginning of the move-in process all the way through the end of the move-in process. What you're going to find when you are training people is that there are items that are not documented. If you have them documented, there are items that are just in your head that you're like, oh wow, I need to get this out. You're going to find out that there's reports that needed to be created. Maybe there's even tagging that you need to do in your software, or you need to create, fields in your software. You may even find that you might need to create some policy that you never actually had a policy down for a way something specific happens. So it's important. Start from the beginning, train them an hour and a half a day. The next day, you don't ask them what'd you learn. What you do is you go back from the beginning again. And I know this seems tedious, but believe it or not, it'll extend your training a little bit. But when the training is over, the team members are gonna understand the process much better. They're gonna understand the material much better. So less questions, less escalations. After training, obviously create an escalation path, kind of put the training wheels on so that everything gets escalated, and then you redirect and you ask them, hey, how would you do this? Don't get superhero-itis and answer all the questions, right? Like, oh, I'm here to save the day. So training is over, you put them on the phones, or they start doing the process, something comes up and you want everything escalated. This makes your day a little bit more difficult, understandably so, because you have to spend time to take all the escalations. But what happens over the next 30 days is the 100% of escalations goes down to about 10%. which is the 10% you want, because that's the stuff that probably needs to get escalated to your property manager or your supervisor or you. But this allows them to get trained up fully and allows them a training period where they can ask you questions and then you redirect. Again, Ken Blanchard's 1 Minute Manager book is something that I highly recommend that you read, and this will help you get your team up and running. How long does it take to train? It just depends on the job role that you're giving them. The more decision points on the job role, the longer the training. So for example, in maintenance, there's a lot of decision points. That takes a lot of training. To be honest with you, it took me 90 days of training for my maintenance team. But when I was done, they were able to speak to residents, speak to owners, know what stuff was should be escalated. They knew about all the policies. They were running the maintenance division. My lease renewal person, that took 2 weeks because there was very little decision trees that were done. And we created some policy to even reduce the decision making. So once you train them, now they're doing all of the work remotely, and you get to build proactive relationships. You have to run a proactive company. So those are my tips on training your remote team.